Guys, today we are taking a look at St. John's basketball. Coach Rick Pitino is in his second season at the helm, and I think it's an exciting time to be a fan of St. John's. Last year they were very competitive, just missed out in the NCAA tournament. A lot of people thought they deserved to be in, and I think while they've lost a lot of players, they've reloaded and are ready to challenge again to make that NCAA tournament berth appearance. And so last year, they were 20-13, 11-9, which was fifth in the Big East. They went 1-1 in the Big East tournament, where they lost to eventual national champion UConn in what was one of their closer games of the last 11 that UConn won. St. John's gave them a real challenge, and this was a good team headlined by Dennis Jenkins and Joel Soriano. Chris Ledlum and Jordan Dingle were also key contributors, along with RJ Lewis. And a lot of those guys are not coming back. And so I think it's a good time here to just jump right in. Let's go through the roster. Then, as we do in each one of these videos, the starting lineup in rotation and my schedule and predictions for the season. So, roster. As I mentioned, a lot of guys are gone. Dennis Jenkins, he's the key piece. I thought he was awesome last season. I really liked him as a player. I hope he can latch on at the next level. I know he's been around college basketball a lot. Typically, guys like that have a little bit of a tougher time finding a team that's willing to take a chance on them. But I just think he's a great player. The big guy, Joel Soriano, good scorer. As a big, maybe didn't give you everything you wanted defensively. And then there were some matchups where it felt like it just wasn't his day. But overall, as a college player, very good. Chris Ledlum gave them good minutes, along with Jordan Dingle. Naheem Aline was available off the bench. And then Glenn Taylor and Sean Conway were also rotation players that are not back for them this season. So speaking of who's not back, well, what about who is back? RJ Lewis, as I mentioned before, he's the best returning player for this team. I really liked his game. The only concern with RJ is he was just not a good three-point shooter. But I think that can improve. Like, his jumper looks good. It's just he doesn't have the results. So maybe over the summer it's something he worked on. Zuby Ejiofor is back. He was their backup center last season. But I think he's going to be expected to play a lot more minutes, and arguably deservedly so. Played pretty well for them in limited minutes last year. And then Brady Dunlap and Simeon Wiltshire are back. Both guys can shoot the three. I think Dunlap might project a little bit better as a three-point shooter with his size at the position. I believe he is, let's check really quickly. Yeah, he's 6'7", so he can shoot over guys. And I like his size and versatility there. Didn't play a ton of minutes last year. Neither one did. Dunlap was around 12 minutes per game. Wiltshire was 9. But I do think both of those guys could be in for increased minutes this season. So who are the new players? Well, the premier player, arguably the number one transfer in the country, Kadary Richmond, joined St. John's from Seton Hall. That was a really big deal. He is an excellent player. He can really defend. He can score. The only thing he's not great at is three-point shooting. And I think that's a little bit of a theme with this team, but overall, he's a great college player. Davon Smith comes over from Utah, where he had a really outstanding season at Utah. He averaged just over 13 points a game and 7 assists. So he is an out-and-out point guard. Doesn't have great size. Again, not a great shooter. 6'1". He did make one three-pointer a game last season on 2.5 attempts. So it was, over 40%. But prior to that, he was a below 30% three-point shooter. So I wonder how much of last season is maybe a little bit of an aberration. Vincent Iwuchukwu is in from USC, the guy who actually had that the heart condition the year prior to Bronny James, which is kind of crazy that two guys had that at USC. But he transferred over. He'll be part of the center rotation with Zuby Ejiofor. And Aaron Scott, he's in. He transfers over from North Texas, and he's a very intriguing player. I haven't watched him, but when you look at his numbers, 11 points, just under 6 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block. and he made just over 1 3 per game last season, 37%. So he's a very intriguing player as a big wing who looks like he can defend. So you've got those 4 key transfers, and then Jaden Glover, 78th ranked player in the class. He's 6'5". Kaman Maker, 132nd ranked player. He's a 7-footer. And Lefteris Leotopoulos, he's a 6'5" player from Greece who's unranked. Maybe Coach Pitino's connections from Greece paid off for him on that player. So, moving into the projected starting lineup in rotation, I think like a lot of teams, there are some guys that I think are a little bit more clear-cut, and there's some areas where it's more of a question. And with this team, I think there's 2 guys that I'm 100% certain they're going to start. Davon Smith and Kadary Richmond. Those 2 guys, they're going to start. They're going to play 30 minutes or more, maybe 30 minutes, somewhere around that range. And they're going to play. They're going to be key players. That's the word I'm looking for St. John's. And then it gets a little bit interesting for me. Like RJ Lewis, for example. I think most people would think he's going to be a starter out and out. But last season, he played in 23 games. He had 10 starts. And I wonder if he might be better off as the 6th man for this team. I do, as of right now, project him to start, but I wonder if that might be the role he ends up being in. And then I have Zubi Ejiofor being the starter over Vincent Iwuchukwu at center. And then the most difficult spot for me to figure out was that 2 position, the shooting guard, that other wing, next to RJ Lewis. And I think Aaron Scott has a legitimate he has a legitimate reason to be a starter based off of his numbers. However, I ended up siding with Brady Dunlap. I know he's very unproven, but I think his size and shooting is going to be really important for St. John's this season because when you look at a lot of the guys on the team, they just don't have shooting. Now, with that said, Aaron Scott is probably the best shooter of the guys of the top 6 players, let's say, that I left out besides Dunlap. And so he certainly, that's where I think you could have the argument that he starts ahead of RJ Lewis, and Lewis is your 6th man. So that's kind of where I ended up falling upon that. Guys 7, 8, and 9 in no particular order. Vinci Iwuchukwu, like I said, he's the 1-2 punch with Ejiofor at center. Simeon Wilcher, I think he'll get minutes based off of how he shot the ball last season in limited minutes. And Jaden Glover as the highest ranked freshman, I think will be part of the rotation, but not a major part, which means Kaman Maker and Lefteris Leotopoulos are out of the rotation as of right now. Haven't seen them play, but as lower ranked or unranked freshmen, typically it takes some time to crack a college rotation, especially with a team that has much talent as this one does. So, schedule and predictions. Non-conference play for St. John's. We're going to go over the notable matchups. And the first one is they'll play at Madison Square Garden in, I guess, what's a neutral site game, but it's not a neutral site game. That's a home game for St. John's against New Mexico, which is going to be fun. That's Coach Rick Pitino, so you got father versus son. I think listen, I like to dabble in sports betting. I think this is a good game, depending on the line, to bet St. John's. I just have a hard time seeing the son being the father in this matchup. Then they'll be in the Bahamas for 3 games. They'll be in this mini tournament. With first game will be Baylor, which is their toughest non-conference test, and then either Tennessee or Virginia. So either they're going to get another really good opponent or an average opponent, I think, in Virginia. And then they'll stick around in Bahamas and take on Georgia as well as a separate game there. And then, as part of the Big 12 Big East Challenge, they'll have a home game versus Kansas State. In conference play, one thing I love about the Big East, you got everyone home and away. So you've got Xavier, Georgetown, Providence, UConn, Marquette, Villanova, Creighton, Butler, DePaul, and Seton Hall. So I think it's awesome that the Big East, I know, with all these major conferences, the way we're moving, this isn't going to last much longer. But I think it's just great that you get to see everyone home and away. I think ideally that's how it should be. But That's not how it's going to be. So with that being said, prediction time is where we're at here. So I think based off their non-conference schedule, I think that Baylor game is going to be tough. I don't see them winning that one. And then I don't know if they're going to end up playing Tennessee or not. If they play Tennessee, I would take Tennessee. But I wouldn't be like as confident as I am in taking Baylor. So with that said, I ended up having them getting a second loss in non-conference play. Not sure if it's Tennessee or Kansas State, maybe Georgia in Bahamas, or maybe it's they lose a fluke game to one of their mid-major opponents. Definitely could happen. So 9-2. Conference play, I have them going 13-7. I think they're a really good team. I was tempted to go even a little bit higher, and I'll tell you the reason that held me back was this team's three-point shooting. Their Kadary Richmond doesn't shoot a ton of threes. Their point guard Davon Smith doesn't shoot a ton of threes. RJ Lewis is not a good shooter. They don't get shooting from the center position, so there's a lot of their shooting responsibility is on Aaron Scott and guys like Brady Dunlap and Simeon Wilcher were not proven. And so I think that's something that could hold back the offense. But defensively, I think this team is going to be really good. And I think they'll be able to score inside the paint, just maybe not at the highest level because of the lack of three-point shooting. So 13-7 conference play, which gives them a 22-9 overall record in the regular season, which I do believe would get them into the NCAA tournament. And it would be, Coach Pitino's second season. I just have a lot of confidence in this team making a tournament berth. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How do you think St. John's is going to fare this season? If you're a fan of another team, comment that team, and I'll profile them for the start of the season. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow. I'm Jack. This is Talking Ball. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.